Welcome, welcome, welcome to the final session of the Health Equity Series. We are super excited about today's session with our panelists. So again, welcome to the final session of the Health Equity Series by the Tennessee Department of Health, the Office of Primary Prevention, and the Division of Health Disparities Elimination. So let me introduce myself. My name is Elizabeth Hart. I am the Director of the Office of Faith-Based and Community Engagement at the Tennessee Department of Health. And I must say, as a proud collector and supporter of the arts, I am super excited about today's session. I mean, we are all very excited. All the panelists are. Today, our focus will be on the intersection of art and health. And we have an incredible panel for you today. So in just a moment, I'm going to introduce the panelists and give them each time to brag on themselves and the phenomenal work that they are doing in their communities and organizations. We'll also have a discussion and finish with a Q&A. Speaking of questions, you are encouraged to use the chat feature to ask questions of the panelists, and we'll get to them towards the end of the time today. Now, if you have previously attended a session that I have led in this Health Equity Series, or any other meeting that I've led, you know that I love to start these conversations on a positive note and a quote of inspiration. So I found one from the Creative City Network of Canada, so our neighbors to the far north. It says, quote, "Arts and culture make considerable and necessary contributions to the well-being of communities. Arts and culture are powerful tools with which to engage communities in various levels of change. They are a means to public dialogue, contribute to the development of a community's creative learning, create healthy communities capable of action, provide a powerful tool for community mobilization and activism, and help build community capacity and leadership." What a powerful quote that is. So now let me introduce our wonderful panelists. First, we have Dr. Jill Sankey. She is the director of the Center for Arts and Medicine at the University of Florida. She is currently serving as senior advisor to the CDC Vaccine Confidence and Demand Team on the COVID-19 Vaccine Confidence Task Force. She is also an affiliated faculty member in the University of Florida School of Theater and Dance, the Norman Fixel Institute for Neurological Diseases, the Center for African Studies, the STEM Translational Communications Center, and the One Health Center. Whew, that's a lot. We are so happy to have Dr. Jill Sankey with us today. Also, we have Kim Johnson. She is the Director of Arts Access at the Tennessee Arts Commission. Her position includes ensuring access to the arts for underserved communities, Title VI coordination and compliance, and increased arts opportunities for persons with disabilities. So happy to have Ms. Kim here. And finally, we have Rashad Rayford, also known as Rashad the Poet. He is an award-winning actor, poet, and speaker. He was crowned the Moth Story Hour Nashville Grand Slam champion. And full disclosure, Rashad has also helped the Tennessee Department of Health with multiple marketing campaigns, including one about COVID-19 that earned us an Emmy nomination. So let's give everyone a round of applause for being here as our panelists. And without any further ado, Rashad, if you could tell those that are watching about yourself and the work that you are doing in your community.
All right. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? I'm live in the living color. Hey, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Rashad Rayford. As Elizabeth said, I'm super glad to be here with you all this afternoon. I have a company called Elevate Your Vibe, which is a non-traditional speaking company that blends inspirational speaking, spoken word poetry, and business talk to help businesses tell more consistent and concise stories. I started out as a poet. I've been a poet for about 20 years. I've been an actor for about 20 years as well. And, you know, for me, art has always played a big part in my life. It's always been a big part of who I am and who I've become. And I think that the conversation around, you know, what does art look like in the business world? You know, it's a foreign space for a lot of us. And, you know, as I continue on this journey with my company, as I go into these business spaces, which art is nowhere to be found, it's almost like being a fish out of water. In essence, you have to figure out ways in which to help people understand how to tell their story. You know, we get bogged down with the language of business and the jargon of the X's and the O's, and really, we don't really get to the heart of, like, we're people. You know, these are people. Everybody that you work with is a living, breathing human being. Everybody that you work with has their own set of individual struggles and issues and things that they deal with. And, you know, we have always been taught since we were little, keep your business your business. You know, don't talk about things at work, or don't bring this into the work, but you're a human. And that's really difficult for a lot of people. So what happens? People end up suppressing things, right? We suppress stuff and we keep stuff down and we don't express what we feel. And I think we should do it in the workplace simply because we're normally at work more than we're with our families. So in essence, the people that we work with become our family, whether we like them or not, right? They become our family. And so if we don't learn how to communicate what we feel, then there's a lot of interpretation that gets misconstrued. You know, there's a lot of conversations that don't happen that should happen. And a lot of times what I see when I go in to do these workshops, when I go in to do these conferences, is I see that it's not that people don't want to communicate with each other, they don't know how. And so bringing art to the table really allows for people to have the conversations that they didn't think they would have. And the beauty about spoken word poetry is people are more likely to listen to a poem than they are to just sit and listen to you tell them, like, what their gripe is or what their beef is. If they can say it in a poem, we're more likely to listen to it. I don't know why. This is just a scientific fact, right? People are just more likely to sit and listen to you say the exact same thing in a poem that you would if you were just having a normal everyday conversation with them. And so poetry unlocks that. Poetry unlocks this inability to communicate. I always tell people, because it's so funny, when I first started my business a few years ago, people were, you know, in the beginning bringing me in as this like this halftime show, if you will, right? When these conferences happen and they have 4 or 5 speakers, and then, you know, they'll bring me in the middle to be like, hey, everybody get up, wake up. We got somebody that's going to come and do something really cool and creative, and it's going to be fun. And, you know, you would have people coming up to me afterwards and saying, hey, I got more out of what you said than like what all of these speakers were talking about. And it became a thing where I try to tell people, and this is like the main message that I like to give organizations, is that art is not a break from your message. You know, art is the vehicle in which to deliver your message. So the staple of my business is basically I just go in and I take companies' language. I take what they're saying and I just repackage it in a way that's super easy to understand. I repackage it in a way that's entertaining. I repackage it in a way that really gets to the heart of the story. Because again, storytelling for me is important. It's a super important part of what we do and how we are able to make, you know, significant change. Like art reduces stress. You know, art enhances our mood. You know, and when we talk about like health equity, it's really the same as art equity, in the sense of when I'm able to express what I feel and you're able to express what you feel and she's able to express what she feels, then we all have this different way in which we can now approach each other. And the beautiful thing about, you know, these workshops, especially with adults, is 9 times out of 10, adults will come in and they will be like, I don't write poetry. I've never done this before. You're not going to be able to get me to write anything. And it's those people by the end of the session, whether it's an hour session or a 4-hour session, are the people who are like, I have more to share. I hate that we ran out of time. You know, do you think I'll be able to do? And so I think art unlocks this door, you know, and again, sometimes we lose like this innocence as we continue to grow and as we become adults. But every business that's surviving in 2021 is surviving off innovation, because they're innovating. They're figuring out ways in which to move to the next level. But innovation does not happen without imagination. We cannot innovate if we don't have imagination. And so the spoken word allows us to do that. It allows us to open up these doors. It allows us to be able to look inside of ourselves. It allows us to find empathy that maybe we didn't realize that we had. It allows us to see people in ways that we might not have ever seen them before. And it gives us confidence. It gives us confidence to react. It gives us confidence. It gives us power. It encourages us to move to the next step, to move to the next level. I work with an organization called Southern Word, and we go into high schools all over the state of Tennessee, teaching literacy using the power of poetry and spoken word. And, you know, people always ask me, like, how is it? Is it like the same everywhere you go? And I'm like, students are students, regardless if I'm in the inner city, if I'm in rural Tennessee, students are students. It doesn't matter their race. They are dealing with the same issues that teens deal with on a day-to-day basis. And the beautiful thing is that this art gives them voice. You know, it's so hard in this world to build community. It's so hard to find your tribe. And so this gives students, and it doesn't matter where they're from, it doesn't matter what they look like. It gives them a voice to say, hey, like, I actually have something important to say. I have something to offer this world. And again, this is the beauty of art. This is the beauty of us being able to go into Vanderbilt Psych and be able to talk to students who are totally dealing with things that we couldn't even imagine, and to have them write their story and say, you know what, this has totally changed me. This has totally made me feel better. So I'm always inspired. I'm always inspired, regardless if it's students, regardless if it's adults, regardless if I'm doing a conference full of a room full of lawyers, if I'm doing a conference with techies, if I'm doing a conference on healthcare and the social determinants of health. Like, it's all relative to us realizing the power of our voice, the power of our message, the power of art, and how art can be fun, and how art can literally change us and change our mood instantly. And I'm just loving this panel, and I'm glad to be here, and I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you so much, Rashad. I don't know about anyone else, but I'm now pumped for this entire panel. So now I will pass the microphone to Miss Kim Johnson. Kim, if you could tell everyone about yourself and the work that you do at your organization.
Oh, thank you all. Well, first of all, thank you to all the folks at the Tennessee Department of Health for putting this together. This is really wonderful. And I'm really excited today to talk to you all about this intersection of arts and health, and how this really impacts in real life, how we use art as a tool to improve the mental and physical health of people. I'm Kim Johnson. I'm Director of Arts Access at the Tennessee Arts Commission. And people often say to me, they say, what is Arts Access all about? And the way I explain it is simply this: it's a way of reducing boundaries so that people who are underserved or underrepresented can have complete access to the arts and all of the wonderful things that it provides. And people say, well, what are those boundaries? And some of those boundaries may include things like geographic boundaries. If you're in a rural community, you may not have as many access to resources or arts programming, but it also happens in urban areas, in neighborhoods and communities, which I call art deserts, where you don't have much access to the arts either. It can also be barriers can include cultural barriers through different ethnic groups. It can be language barriers. It could be income barriers. And it can be things like physical ability. So there's really a multitude, a long list there of barriers that really can prevent people from accessing the arts. But one of the things that we try to do at the Tennessee Arts Commission is through reducing these barriers, we try to increase equity so that all people, can really, enjoy the arts. And that's what it's all about for us. At the Tennessee Arts Commission, our director is Ann Pope. We're a small staff of about 19 people, a small state agency, but our mission is mighty. And that is simply this: to cultivate the arts for the benefit of all Tennesseans and their communities. And so we try to do that. on a daily basis. But I think there are two ways, we do this in many ways, but I think there are two ways in particular that pertain to this topic in which we try to accomplish this. And the first one is we try to do this through funding arts and cultural organizations that are really out in communities. And the second way is that we do, we work through partnerships and initiatives that we kind of work with at the Tennessee Arts Commission. I'll just briefly talk about both of those. In terms of funding arts and cultural organizations, we fund over about 700 different organizations and artists and nonprofits each year, totaling about a little bit over $7 million in the state of Tennessee. We fund 501c3 nonprofits. We fund local governmental entities, and we fund schools in all 95 counties throughout Tennessee, and that's something that we're proud of. People say, what do you fund? We fund everything. We fund operas, ballets, symphonies, but then we fund things like, small rural communities where they're doing quilting, or we also fund storytelling nonprofits. We fund, of course, K through 12 schools on a variety of things. And we support groups like the Memphis Black Arts Alliance, or the Bengali Association, or Casa Teatro Bilingual Theater Group in Memphis. And these are kind of, all of these groups we fund. And I must say a special area that we fund is folk life here in Tennessee. Those traditions and cultures that are passed down from generation to generation, things like African American quartet gospel singing, things that you're beginning to see that are rare, but we're trying to preserve those kinds of things. Things like white oak basket making, old time filling, and Choctaw bead making. Those things that are going away, but we're trying to preserve them through folk life at the Tennessee Arts Commission. So we fund all of that, but I wanted to give you two good examples of how we use arts as a tool to improve the health outcomes of people. And one of them is right here in Middle Tennessee, and it's called Healing Arts Project here in Davidson County. And this organization just briefly works with people who are going through addiction recovery. Okay, they have multiple centers throughout Tennessee, and this is what they do. But what they found that is by using art, what it does is, and this has all been researched and all of this, but it really creates an enhanced sense of self-worth for individuals who participate in their art classes. People who go through their classes experience overall confidence, and it's really helping people to see that they can empower themselves and that they can focus more on their abilities in life rather than their disabilities. And so that's a real concrete example of how providing the arts can help. Another example is with the Tennessee Shakespeare Company, actually in West Tennessee. And they are using the power of Shakespeare's text and his spoken language to work with military veterans. Military veterans suffer from things like PTSD and other traumatic brain injuries. And at the Veterans Hospital, they are teaching these veterans how to de-escalate, certain thoughts and feelings when they're triggered by, sometimes larger things that are happening. And so this has been a way of using Shakespeare's language in West Tennessee. And so far, the program is being shown as being, people have used the word, doctors have said, it's remarkable what they're seeing, because they're seeing a dramatic improvement with this program in their veteran population. So that's two good examples. There are many, many more, just don't have the time to go over those, of how we're really connecting, the arts with improving people's lives in terms of mental and physical health. The second way I mentioned very briefly is how we're using partnerships and initiatives to really create change, especially on the statewide level. And so let me just give you an example of that. One of our, 2 years ago, we worked with the Tennessee Department of Health, and we actually applied for $1 million from the Civil Monetary Penalty Fund, and we received that $1 million grant. And that was with the Tennessee Department of Health and the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. And what this program is called is called the Tennessee Person-Centered Music Program. And what this is all about is that we provide in nursing homes to nursing home residents personalized playlist so that they residents can reduce their aggressive behaviors. We can decrease antipsychotic medication usage and increase social engagement of residents in nursing homes. We're hoping to reach about 147 nursing homes throughout Tennessee. That's about half, give or take, the nursing homes throughout the state. And we're working with the Tennessee Commission on Aging and Disability with folks who really implement this program. But what we're seeing now, we're beginning to see the results. This started 2 years ago. We've got another 1.5 years with the program. But really what's happening there is music is being used as a tool to really help people recover their memories. And through that, we're seeing significant results. Things like people who were not communicating before are beginning to say a few words. See, that's the power of music, for example. Or we had one resident who was in a wheelchair and who actually got up, and maybe she wanted to dance, but she got up and took a few steps after listening to her playlist of music. And I always tell people we can see the power of music, because how does it make us feel when we listen to our favorite song or songs on our playlist? And so there's power behind that art form. So the Tennessee Arts Commission, at the Tennessee Arts Commission, you can see that we're addressing equity through the lens of funding programs and funding initiatives to culturally underserved communities and populations throughout Tennessee to ensure that everyone has access to this power in the arts. And so we're happy to be here today, and I look forward to all the questions and everything that we're going to hear today, but I'll send it back to you, Elizabeth.
Wow, thank you so much, Kim. You know, full disclosure, I did not know that the Arts Commission did all of those wonderful things. And so it's really great to hear that. And I hope others are just as grateful for hearing that information. So now, without any further ado, our last panelist, Dr. Sankey, if you could provide some information about who you are and the incredible work that you are doing in the state of Florida.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I'm so happy to be here. It's just so great to be with all of your energy, which is just so beautiful. Thank you. So I'm Jill Sankey. I direct the Center for Arts and Medicine at the University of Florida. I'm a mother and a grandmother and an artist most of my life. I've identified as a dancer, but most recently I am a musician. I took up guitar just before the pandemic, actually, and started singing after mouthing the words to Happy Birthday to spare those around me for my entire life. I finally stepped into singing and discovered I loved it, and I have something to add in that area. And since that time, I have rediscovered the relationship with the arts that Rashad and Kim have articulated so beautifully today. I sing and play my guitar every single day, and it has made me feel like the ways in which I have described the importance of the arts to health for the past 27 years since I've been in this field has been wildly understated. So I am a human who's rediscovered the power of the arts in this space. So in my professional world, as I mentioned, I direct the center. I'm a researcher, I'm an educator, though I'm doing a lot of administrating these days. The Center for Arts and Medicine has been around since 1996 at the University of Florida. It grew from the incredible work of artists and residents in the UF Health Shands Arts and Medicine program. I started working as one of those artists and residents in 1994 as a dancer in residence, and I was also teaching on the dance faculty at UF. And so we created the center in 1996, recognizing that this was going to be a thing, this arts and health thing. So we created this academic center. We grew in a very grassroots way as a center at the university. We were very practice-based, doing work across the arts and health in our communities. And now we have 91 graduate students in arts and health at UF. We have an MA in arts and medicine and graduate certificates in arts and public health and arts and medicine. We have 6 combined degrees and 4 undergraduate certificates. So we're seeing so many people recognizing these connections between the arts and health and wanting to locate themselves professionally at these intersections, which is really exciting. So we're educators in the center. We also are researchers. I run 2 research labs, our interdisciplinary research lab, which is a super dynamic group of 35 students and faculty and staff who undertake 6 to 10 studies together at a time. So we investigate what the arts do in healthcare and what the arts do in communities. Our other research lab is the Epi Arts Lab. It's a National Endowment for the Arts research lab at the University of Florida. And we do population level studies. So we do epidemiological studies that look at the population level impacts of arts participation on an array of health outcomes. So for example, one of our recently published studies, and this is the foundational study of the Epi Arts Lab, looks at who participates in the arts in the United States. So we're looking at equity and the social gradients across arts participation, that social gradient that we've been long aware of in the United States. But what this study has added to that investigation and that conversation is that we recognize that this social gradient exists mostly around attendance of arts events. Clearly, there are a lot of barriers to attendance of arts events, but it doesn't exist significantly around arts activities, things people do on their own, or participation in creative groups. And it doesn't exist around interest in participation in the arts. So this study has helped us understand a little more about disparities around arts participation. It also positions arts participation as a health behavior, recognizing we have so much evidence, right, of the health benefits of the arts that Rashad and Kim, you've articulated so beautifully today. So we recognize that arts participation is a health behavior. And if we don't address disparities in arts participation, we're contributing to health disparities. So there is a health imperative for us to address disparities in arts participation. So this work is very much aligned with the work that we've done in the center in our Creating Healthy Communities Arts and Public Health initiative across the past 5 years. We had the great good fortune of connecting with Art Place America and working with them excuse me, on health in the area of creative placemaking. And we created a whole array of resources based on research that we did that looked closely at how the arts are engaged in communities for health in the United States. So we published a white paper called Creating Healthy Communities Through Cross-Sector Collaboration that encourages cross-sector collaboration between the public health and arts sectors, recognizing that those sectors have always each worked to improve the human condition and to create healthier communities. Artists have always worked around health and equity and making the human experience better. Public health has as well, but what we're missing today is the combined strengths of those knowledge bases that we're hearing about today. So we developed a lot of resources to help drive that work. I've also, as Elizabeth mentioned, been serving as senior advisor to the CDC's Vaccine Confidence and Demand Team on the COVID-19 task force. And of course, this is a very critical issue these days, vaccination in the United States, and the CDC has recognized, again, so in keeping with Rashad, your beautiful comments about poetry and how people understand things differently and engage more fully in information in the context of poetry. So fortunately, the CDC has recognized the truth in that and has recognized that we need artists and culture bearers in communities, artists as incredible translators of ideas and as advocates in their communities and as trusted members of communities. We need artists and culture bearers to be a part of health communication in this moment as we work to address the COVID-19 pandemic. So in this work, we've created field guides to guide partnership between local health departments and artists and culture bearers, and to help those partnerships build health communication programs that can be more impactful. There's also a grant opportunity that I hope folks know about. The CDC is awarding grants to arts organizations and to artists. The RFP closes tomorrow. So again, I hope people are aware, and want to encourage you to just jump in, even though it's the last minute. And I'll close by just saying that all of this work that we do, and in the Center for Arts and Medicine, I think we are in this conversation a reflection of how important this conversation is, and how much more clearly we in the United States are recognizing the essential and critical connections between the arts and health, to the point that we now have academic degrees, dedicated field journals, grant opportunities. There is a professional field and discipline that has emerged and is strong. There are job opportunities in this space. And we hope that what all of this will amount to in the end is that as a general public, we understand that, like exercise, good nutrition, wearing seatbelts, not smoking, being creative is just simply something we should do every week. It's a tool we have in our toolkits to be healthier and to thrive. In fact, the arts are essential to our survivals as a human species. And I love to quote my new friend Christopher Bailey at the World Health Organization, who is leading the WHO, their huge arts and health initiative right now, who always notes that hope is a creative act, and that in that way, creativity and the arts are indeed essential to our survival as a species.
Wow. Can everyone just take a moment, just reflect on these three panelists? I mean, it's truly incredible that we were able to get all three of these incredible folks on this panel for today. So we're going to jump into a couple of questions and have a discussion among the panelists. And so for the panelists, you feel free to unmute yourself and to answer the questions that come out. And we'll just go in whatever order, whoever wants to pipe in. So the first question is, how does art help us understand the lives of people of different times, plans, and cultures? Feel free to hop in if you'd like.
Well, I'll try to give a stab at that, I guess, first. I guess that's a loaded question for an arts person, but how does it really, connect us all? I mean, the arts, as Jill has just mentioned, I mean, it's just vital to life itself. As individuals here on this planet, the arts is really about being who we are, as a person. And so it's vital in, to me, so many different areas. It connects diverse communities. The arts, when you go to a festival whether it's a Latino festival or a Scottish festival or, anything that you can think of, an African-American festival or a multicultural festival or something, you're learning, as an individual who goes to that, you're learning about the culture of people as you walk around. You're taking in the sights, the sounds, the food, the fragrances, talking to people, looking at people. And so I think it's a good connector, because I think the next time then I think there's something in the brain, the next time then that you come in contact, let's say, with a person from that culture, guess what? You're probably a little bit less, you're probably more comfortable, I would say, in connecting with that person. And so to me, the arts is just vital, to being a connector, with people. And it really, to me, in many ways, can start that conversation and open up people's minds.
Thank you so much, Kim. Rashad or Dr. Sankey, do either would like to join in?
Sure, I'll be happy to chime in. Human beings have, throughout history, throughout time, throughout cultures, use the arts to express the experience of being human, right? And to express the things that don't fit into particular paradigms or words. I mean, we see evidence of art as a human behavior throughout history, and especially as it pertains to the things that are most challenging and difficult, not only to understand, but to experience and to cope with. So that I think the arts are deeply essential to our experience as human beings. And I think in the United States today, many of us are somewhat acculturated to the arts in a very in a way that's different than most of humanity and most of human experience throughout history. We've over-specialized the arts. We've made them, we've separated them from the fabric of our daily lives. We've made them elite. We've made them cost. And we feel like I felt about singing. I felt I didn't sing well, and so I stopped singing, right? And that's fairly unique to our cultural experience, I believe, at this time in the United States. And I also believe that can change, and I see it changing right now. So I think the arts are essential. We cannot fully empathize without narratives. And I don't feel like we can communicate human narratives and experiences without the arts. We need the nuances and all of the flavors of emotion and color and form that the arts can bring.
And I just wanted to piggyback off of that in saying that, you know, art is the key, right? It's the key to unlock the door. And it's also the story, you know, and we tell stories in so many different ways. You know, all of our stories are not verbal. And so the beauty of art is that it allows us to see the story. You know, it allows us to see the narrative that the person is able to create, and we're able to interpret it and see it in a different way than we may have seen it previously. And so, like, again, like, that's the beauty that art brings to the table. And I love that, you know, it definitely has not, it has been erased in a sense, because we have put so much pressure on people that art has to be this thing. And if it's not this thing, then it's not art. And we have, in essence, I think, shelved so many people out of their expression. And this is the beauty of bringing it back. This is the beauty of saying, like, it doesn't matter. Come as you are. Come to the table with whatever you have. And because that, and again, it just changes the way we have confidence in ourselves. Like, to see people go from just being so quiet, and there's nothing wrong with being quiet, but, you know, I always tell people, and I always tell students, it's not about saying that you will now become the most vocal person in the world. I'm here, the party can begin. Like, no, it's not saying that. It's just saying that when it's time for you to speak up for yourself, when it's time for your voice to be heard, when it's time for you to step in the gap when it's necessary for yourself and for others, you have the ability and the tools to do it. And that's what art does. It allows that release. And it's such a beautiful thing. So
thank you. Thank you all for those responses. Just as a reminder to all those that are watching the panel, feel free to drop your questions into the Q&A portion section of your Microsoft Teams. We'd be happy to try to answer some of your questions. So the next question we're going to ask the panelists to respond to, in your opinion, how do images, feels, or sounds of art influence our views of the world? Who wants to start with that one? You're muted, Rashad.
okay. I think it was said a little bit earlier about how, you know, we look at, am I still muted? Oh, I'm good. Okay. I think it was said earlier about what music does. You know, you can be having a terrible day and you can hear something and it instantly makes you smile, right? There's nothing like art. There's nothing like the sound of art, the sound of music, you know, certain smells that instantly take us back to a place that we haven't visited in a really long time. And I think, like, that's the power of, like, all of these different things. You know, we talk about the five senses and how important they are. And I talk about, like, sensory imagery and how important it is to use sensory details and when we write and when we communicate with people, because what it does is it sparks something inside of us that allows us to feel something, to go to a place, to react in a way that 5 minutes earlier, we were not going to react. This was going to be a terrible day and it just was going to be terrible. And I don't care what you said. And then boom, this thing happens and it becomes this chain reaction. And, you know, we're able to trick our brain, you know, because I do it all the time. I mean, I'm sure other people do it as well. You can be going through something and you have a right to be to feel a certain type of way. But you can turn on a song and smile and say, you know what, I'm not going to allow this to like make me feel this kind of way. I'm going to change my mood and go this way. And so I think, like all of these factors with this sensory detail and the sensory imagery, the feel of something, the taste of something, the sight of the seeing something, it's just a way in which it can cause us to totally do a 180 in how we feel and in what we do. So it's I have this thing where I say, we just always default back to positivity. At the end of the day, we're human. You're going to go through what you go through, however long you need. Everybody's time is different, but I have a set time in my mind of how long I'm going to let myself stay in this place, and then I got to default back. So that's one thing I would say is just try to default back to that positive mindset, and it'll definitely help along the way.
I would build on that a bit and offer a frame that we bring to our research quite a bit. So we think of the arts as a uniquely multimodal thing in our research. It's important to our research. It's also important to our understanding of why the arts are so incredibly useful around health, right? They bring us physical benefits, psychological benefits, emotional, cognitive, spiritual, social benefits, all at the same time. And they're really unique among things that we can do and among health interventions in that way. That also fits, I think, in regard to your question, Elizabeth, about how art influences our views of the world, because in that multimodal, holistic way, when we experience an idea or someone's story or information through the arts, it's coming to us through all of those modalities. It's coming to us spiritually, physically, through an embodied experience, emotionally through empathy, right, with characters, with narratives, with ideas, cognitively. So we're taking in ideas and experiences and narratives in such a holistic manner. And I think in terms of our views of the world and how those are important for us, that what I think of as holistic empathy that we can garner through the arts is really critical to understanding, especially understanding experiences that are not our own, right?
And I'll just add, and everything that Rashad and Jill have already said, and just ditto that, and just exactly say what you're saying is that, I mean, the arts is when you're experiencing those images and sounds, something I think within us, maybe changes the way that we think of what we do, of our way of being. And so it's just vital to be exposed to different art forms all throughout life, different cultures, throughout life, and to experience that, like I said before, the taste, the sounds, the feel, the smells, because it does change us.
Thank you all. So another question, we kind of touched on it a little bit already, but what can be learned from our responses to art? Right? So whether it's music, whether it's pieces of artwork, or whether it's playing the guitar, as Dr. Sankey has picked up in the last year and a half, what can be learned from our responses to the art?
Well, I think we've articulated so much of this already, but I think what can be learned from structural perspective, when we think about what we as systems and organizations can learn, is that the arts are just incredibly powerful, right? I mean, we really can't overlook that arts and creative and cultural resources are available in communities. They're activated organically in times of need, but often those resources are underfunded, under-resourced, under-empowered, right? So when we need them most, they're there, and we want to be super careful not to use them, right? I mean, it's not about using, and often the arts are tossed in as an extra, and people think, well, artists don't need to be paid because they love doing it, they're going to do it anyway, and the exposure is going to be great for them. Artists just need more exposure. I mean, that is horrifying, right? And it needs to change. So when we think about these available creative resources, we need to think about the deep bodies of knowledge, the deep wisdom that underpin these traditions and practices, and we need to embrace them as equal partners who need the same kind of compensation, the same kind of recognition, the same kind of power. They're there to be partnered with.
Yeah, I want to follow up with that. And oh, thank you, Jill. We love hearing people that say what you say, because at the Tennessee Arts Commission, we really do believe all artists should be paid. Thank you for saying that. Yes, 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 we are believers in that. And I just wanted to add on and what we're learning from our responses to art, and maybe I'll answering in a different way by saying that, you know, the arts is just so vital in so many ways. It's vital to education. There's so much research out there, from a child being born, hearing music, to, you know, our last music that we hear on earth or something, for example, and everything in between. That it's just vital, you know, to who we are. You know, art also, you know, it's good for the economy. Like Jill was mentioning the fact that, you know, it really is. It's good to economy. And if you go on the Tennessee Arts Commission's website, we do an economic impact study, and we can show you the results because of artists and people who work in the arts, and that economic, you know, impact that occurs with that. You know, the arts also, to me, and people don't think about this much, but I guess because I love history also equally like arts, is that art serves as a historical record. I don't think people think of that. You know, think about the paintings in caves. They could have chosen maybe another way to, but it was what, through visual arts in caves that we have learned a lot of history of past cultures and things, or the hieroglyphics in Egypt. You know, these are just, or, you know, and all of that. We're learning, you know, there's so much that art, of all the things people chose, they're kind of using art and art forms to carry that historical record, you know, of things. But I just wanted to, you know, maybe answer that, you know, in that different way, that the arts is, we're learning a lot from the arts. And, you know, and health and wellness and all those things that come with older age. So those are just, you know, so many things in our country, in our community, in our world that we're learning.
And I'll just piggyback on that as well to say, you know, two different stories where in a school we had a teacher say, you know, hey, this class is, you know, just be aware that this class is probably not going to participate in, because it's just, I've had trouble with them all year long. And then after we leave, to get an email from her and saying, you all totally changed my classroom. You know, once we realized, like, there were 3 to 5 students who were all dealing with the same thing, and nobody in the classroom knew about it. Like, they didn't even know, they were sitting beside each other and didn't even realize that they were both going through these same issues and had these same struggles. And it's totally changed the classroom dynamic. And so that's what we learned from art from that perspective. And even so, in an adult level, where going into an office and helping to change the culture in the office using the spoken word poetry, and having, you know, managers and supervisors are, you know, call me or email me and say, listen, I don't know how you did it, but our office culture is flipped on its head now. Like, I don't even know who these people are anymore. And so art changes us in an instant. Like, it literally has that ability. It doesn't take years and years and years. We can see an instant return on, not investment, I like to say ROI, not return on investment, but return on inspiration, right? Like, we can see that instantly with art, and that's the beauty of this art that we have and that we bring to the table. So
wonderful. Thank you all so much. We actually have 2 questions in the chat, so we really appreciate the folks dropping the questions in the chat. So the first one, the individual asked, how do we minimize stigmas and change the narrative of art and bring the art cultures into communities with disparities? It's a pretty loaded question. Who wants to go first?
Well, I think one of the first ways is, you know, really working in these communities and in these neighborhoods. I call them grassroots. I mean, cultural communities. I mean, getting in there, talking to people, listening to people, working with people, getting them, not like we were saying earlier, not doing things for free and getting paid for things. One of the things that, I always stress to people is, one way to get into cultural communities is to develop that relationship. And developing relationship means, getting in there with the artists and the arts organizations who are doing the work. I mean, whether or not you're in a Latino community, African American, there is art. Native American, there is art. And so, really getting in there and, getting connected with people and getting them connected with places like the Tennessee Arts Commission, which gives out $7 million in funding a year, so that they can be, paid and compensated, for what they do. It's long work sometimes. It takes us sometimes out of normal office hours. But I think the result of that is just tremendous. Being connected, to these communities. One of the things that I do with Arts Access is I provide a lot of technical assistance. Some organizations know things, some organizations don't. Some artists know certain things. There's a business side to doing art. And so, some people know that, some people don't. Some people need more help with that. And so taking the time to provide that assistance and giving resources to people who need it. I mean, these are the things that you do, so that all communities, are just really enjoying the arts, basically. Mm-hmm.
I'd love to jump in here. I love this question. This is a big and beautiful and loaded question that I appreciate so much. And it really, it implies a cultural paradigm shift that we need, right? And a paradigm shift takes a lot of parts. It's not one action that pushes a paradigm shift, but I just want to lift up two actions that I think are really critical right now to contributing to this paradigm shift. And I do see a tipping point in our future around this. So I want to approach this question with a lot of optimism. But the two things that I want to just signal here are that, and Kim touched on this, right? The funding, like who gets funding, how it gets there, is really critical. And so I think a big part of that, I mean, grant funding is a big part of the financial landscape of the arts. And there's other things we could talk about here, but thinking about grants, applications have to change. Artists should be doing the work of artists, not learning how to write governmentally oriented grants. Art Place America was a great example of this. They changed the amounts of money that were going to artists and arts organizations. They changed the barriers on the front end and the back end. The back end, for example, their reports were blogging. So we can make those kinds of changes and think about the energies that go into things like grant writing. It's a terrible use of time and energy, but is blogging a productive use of time and energy that can serve the same purpose? Yes. The other thing, just briefly, is arts education. I think one of the biggest enablers around this paradigm shift will be arts education. So getting the arts back into education at the level that it needs to be so that every kid has the chance to develop themselves artistically.
Thank you. Rashad, did you want to, okay, you're good on that. So we've got time for one more question. How do you think arts can enhance health literacy efforts? How do you think the arts can enhance health literacy efforts? So thank you to the individual who dropped that in the chat. Who would like to take that one?
Well, I'll say, just from, again, my whole thing with everything that I do is just, I try to take, a company's verbiage, a company's language, healthcare verbiage, and I try to just wrap it in storytelling, wrap it in the most simplistic way that I possibly can so that it's understood. And so for me, I love taking big terms. I love taking words that the layperson does not understand, including myself, right? But I love taking those terms, learning what they are, understanding them, and then just, redistributing them in a way that's easy for people to understand, because it's about connecting the dots. You know, if I can connect that this green bucket is used for water and this blue bucket is used for ice, they may have totally different names that I don't understand, but if I can relay that to the person in a way that helps them to visualize, okay, this goes with this, and then this goes with that, but it's called this. Oh, but this is called that, right? And then you're like, oh, I didn't even realize I'm learning like these terms, or I'm learning this language, or I'm learning what this verbiage means. And I think, like, for me, like, that's the easiest way I've learned how to kind of break things down, is to just kind of put pictures with them and use my words and use storytelling to help people kind of relay what goes with what, where, how. And that's kind of become the way that I've kind of been able to break in and open that door a little bit. So
I have to jump in here because I just finished my PhD on arts and health communication. So I'm super excited about this question. And I want to just refer the person who asked to the 2 CDC guides, and I'll be happy to share the links with Elizabeth, but they're pretty easy to find on the CDC website or on the Center for Arts and Medicine website. But there's so many ways that the arts are essential to health communication. One, they're rooted in culture and place, right? And we need to approach people in a personally and culturally relevant manner. They're compelling, they attract attention, they share stories and facilitate dialogue, and that's a really important piece, the facilitation of dialogue. Aesthetic experiences at the heart, they make experiences and information memorable when they're aestheticized. They facilitate social learning, which is so important. They connect and create services and create access, and they enable community-led efforts and social movements, right? The artists have always driven social movements. So there's so many ways in which the arts are just so instrumental around health communication. Again, please reach out if you'd like more resources.
So thank you all so much for the great panelists. I know our time is coming to an end, but I wanted to leave just a few minutes remaining. Want to invite everyone to go to healthdisparities.tn.com. All of the videos from our entire health equity series are housed there. This particular video will be on there very shortly. And in the remaining 2 minutes that we have, if each of the panelists in 30 seconds or left could give their final statements and how individuals can connect with you offline to learn more. So let's start with Dr. Sankey in 30 seconds or less.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Again, it's been such a pleasure. There's so many resources, as I mentioned, on the Center for Arts and Medicine website. If you have any difficulty finding what you're looking for, my email address is jsankey@ufl.edu. And final words, just do it. Just be creative, play, jump into something you haven't jumped into in a long time. Discover the joy. I find that chasing the joy in art means that technique might follow. So just jump in.
Thank you, Dr. Sankey. Rashad.
So we are taught in this, the world we live in, we're taught to, be afraid of our power, but art teaches us to lean into our power, and understanding that, again, creative health is creative wealth, and it's mental health as well. And so it's important for us to lean into that, lean into who we are, let art be a connector, let art be a bridge to open up so many doors for you and allow you to really find that freedom and to find really who you are and who you can be in this world. You can reach me at rashadthepoet.com, that's THAPOET, or you can follow me, elevateyourvibe_ on Instagram.
Thank you so much, Rashad. And Ms. Johnson.
Yeah. You can find me at the Tennessee Arts Commission. That's tnartscommission.org. And you have our list of all of our information there, as well as many resources that we have to help individual artists, as well as organizations. And I'll leave just by saying, be who you are and use the arts as your way of expression. Of expressing, who you are, your way of thinking, your way of doing, and your way of being. Just do it and use the arts as the way of doing it.
Thank you once again to our entire panel. This is the final session of the Health Equity Series, a conversation. More to come, so stay tuned. And again, you can find all of these videos on healthdisparities.tn.com. Thanks, everyone.